Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about one of the most underutilized lures I think that's been out there. It's been out for years and years and years, but over the past 2 or 3 years you don't really hear a ton about it. But it catches a lot of fish, and I think it's worth noting and worth making a video about because a lot of people want to learn how to do this and how to fish it. The lure or the technique I'm talking about is the Texas rig. Now, I know a lot of people still use it, just not as much as they used to. When you're flipping grass and stuff, it's still very popular. Punching is pretty much the same thing, and it catches fish. Years ago, they'd Texas rig a worm whenever that's what they had, just worms and simple plastics like that, and they caught a ton of fish. And you can still do that. The fish, they haven't gotten that much smarter. So in this video we're gonna look into it. I'll show you how to put one together, how I like to put it together, and I'll tell you how to fish it, and we'll figure this out together because this is actually a pretty good way to catch fish. So if you don't already know what a Texas rig is, I'll put a picture up right here and we'll put it together in just a minute. But first I want to tell you about the rod and the reel that you need for it. The way that this is generally set up, you have your hook hidden. I call it Texposed, or you have it just hanging out. And the kind of hook that you use isn't a small hook. Generally it's got some meat to it. You can use different kinds of hooks. I like EWG hooks like this. You can use a worm hook. You can use just about any hook depending on what you're throwing. Anyway, back to the rod. You want something that's a little bit stiffer. A medium heavy is as light as I will go. This right here is a heavy. I use it for my flipping and stuff, and I put Texas rigs on it, I put frogs on it, all that fun stuff. You need that backbone to set the hook and to get the hook into the fish's mouth. The shortest I'll go is a 7 foot. You need some leverage to set the hook. This is a 7'4", and it does perfect for what I'm using it for, and that's why I like it. But everybody has their own preference. Some people like 7.6s. For heavier stuff, a lot of people use 7.11s. I use a 7.11 extra heavy, and that's just how it is. I used to use a 7 foot medium heavy, and it worked for me too, but I have more confidence in something that's a little stiffer. So now we'll talk about the reel. The reel needs to be a little bit faster. Whenever you're fishing this type of lure, you're usually in some sort of cover, or maybe you're not, but if you are, you want to get the fish out quick. So a faster gear ratio is important. Whatever picks up line faster. I'm using the KastKing Speed Demon. It's a 9.3 to 1 gear ratio reel, and it more than does the job to get these fish out, and that's why I like it. I'll put a link in the description if you want to go check these reels out. They're pretty cool. Under $100, which is awesome, and it's quick. And that's what's really important when you're fishing a Texas rig or any type of flipping bait, jig, stuff like that. That's what this is good for. Your line is also very important. If you don't have a line that's strong enough, you risk breaking that fish off, losing the fish, or worse, it could get sad really quick. So I recommend braid. That's what I like to fish if I'm in heavier cover. I use the Bushido braid. 50 pounds, 65, somewhere in that area, something higher, something that you don't have to worry about breaking a fish off on, trees or brush under the water that you can't see. I also occasionally use fluorocarbon, heavier fluorocarbon. This one is 14 pound. This is the Bushido fluorocarbon. Really, I don't like using that light, but for where I've been fishing at, it works. Usually I recommend around 20 and 25. A lot of people recommend that kind of weight for your line because you're pulling these fish out, and you need a little bit of leverage there, some strength. I mean, you pull a 5-pounder out of a bush, and it's rough. It's rough on the line, and you just don't need to go with light line for this generally. Now that we have the rod, reel, and line set up, what I use, what most people tend to go with like that, we'll talk about the hook. Hooks can vary a lot. if you're fishing a worm, you might want to use a worm hook, straighter shank worm hook. I like EWGs for everything, and that's just my personal preference, just because I like it. In my mind, it works a lot better, but that's just for me. I'm sure a lot of other people have a different idea. I use a thin gauge and a really thick gauge whenever I'm around heavy cover. I've been fishing more with this thinner gauge, 3/0, 3, 4, 5/0 hook. Generally is what I'm using depending on what I'm throwing. If I'm throwing a smaller creature bait, then I'll go down to a 3. I've even gone down to a 2 on really short worms, stuff like that. But you gotta base the hook size off of what you're fishing. So if I'm fishing with something like this 3/0 is perfect. It lines up perfectly with the lure, and this is the kind of bait you usually see me throwing on a Texas rig with this hook, and it works really well. Same thing with the weight. I don't have a specific weight for a specific depth. I usually throw 1/4 ounce weights on just about everything, but if I'm in deeper water, I'll go up to a 1/2 ounce tungsten, or even a full ounce if it's, or 3/4 of an ounce if it's really deep, like 25 feet or so. Then I'll use a bigger weight. But usually, I'm pretty shallow with a Texas rig, and you don't need just a ton of weight. Optional, really optional. Some people like this, some people don't. I like it for certain situations. That's a bobber stop or a peg for your weight. What a peg does is it stops your weight from moving up and down the line. Now, in some instances, that's key. If you need a fast fall rate, then pegging your weight will do it, because it'll just drag the whole thing down. Now, if you don't use the weight, your hook will, or your weight will slide up and down. And sometimes your weight will get in front of your lure, and it'll give it a slower fall, which can be good in certain instances, but I like to believe, like 9 out of 10 times, that the fast fall rate is perfect. It gets a reaction bite, and that's what I like to do. Some people don't like to do that. If you're fishing wood cover or grass, I recommend it. Some people don't recommend it with wood. It's just all up to you. I like using it, and I'm going to show you how to use it. And if you don't want to use it, then just do the same thing without the pegs. Let's put this thing together now and show you how a Texas rig is formed. So first thing you do is you take your bobber stop, or if you don't want to use them, skip this step. But the bobber stop has a little hole right there in that wire, and you slide your line through it. I like to get a little bit of line. It should look like this. And then you just go and slide the stop itself off of the wire, and it'll be on your line just like that. The next step is putting on your weight. So you just take the tip end of the weight and slide it on the line just like so. And if you have a peg, it'll stop right there, and if you don't, it'll slide up and down your line, and it'll be really annoying. And that's another reason that I don't not use pegs. I like having pegs for this kind of stuff. Next thing is tying on your hook. Use your favorite knot. Use a Palomar knot. Use a, whatever you like to use. Whenever I'm Texas rigging, I like to snail the knot, and we'll make a video on that later. But a snail knot is really key for the way that I like to fish a Texas rig. And if you watch a video on how to tie it, or if you see mine whenever it comes out, then you'll understand why I like it, because it's strong and it's effective. Next thing you want to consider whenever you're fishing a Texas rig is, what are you going to be fishing? What plastic are you going to be fishing? Whenever I'm flipping cover and stuff, I'm usually using a creature bait like this. You can use a fluke, you can use a worm. The possibilities with a Texas rig and a plastic are endless. So just find what matches what you're fishing and go for it. After you figured out what lure you're going to go with, you need to put it on the hook. And the way to do this is actually pretty simple, but it looks hard. So there is the bend of the hook, right there. What I like to do is just slide my plastic all the way until I hit that bend, okay? And then you just pull it right out, just like that. After that, you slide it up, and you'll notice with the hooks like this that there's a little bend there. The easiest way to get past that is to just twist the hook through it, like twist it around, and pull on your plastic itself, and it'll slide straight up and down like that. Next thing, you need to get the hook inside the bait where it's kind of hidden so you won't get hung up as much. You're looking at that bend again, right there where it bends at, the actual bend itself, and you compare it to the lure, wherever that bend is. And where that bend is, you stick the hook point in. Your lure should bend like that. The actual plastic itself should bend. And you just pull it through. And it should look like that. Your hook should be out here. One of the things to do if you're fishing grass or if you're fishing in cover is take the hook and do what's called Texposing, where you hide the hook tip in the plastic so it's not sticking out to get you hung up. I do this all the time just for safe measure. You don't have to, I just recommend it myself. After you get it on there, you want to slide your weight and your peg down if you have a peg, and it should look a little something like this. Another thing, most people use painted lead. I don't see a point in it. I think if the fish want it, they'll eat it either way. There might be some days where it matters, but I don't think so. I've never seen a day where that matters. And yeah, so that's how I set it up. That's the most simplistic way to set up a Texas rig. So once you make your cast like this, that was a pitch, but you don't have to pitch it, you can cast it out. Now, whenever you cast it out, you want to let it sink. And the way you'll know that is you'll see your line kind of like swimming off, but it's not actually swimming off, it's just sinking. And whenever your line goes slack, you know it's hit the bottom, which is where you want to try to keep it generally. There's 1,000,001 different ways to fish this lure. The way I like to do it, I just lift up on it and I let it sit. And I reel up my slack and I let it sit for a second, and then I reel it, or I pull it up like this again. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. Now whenever I'm doing that, a lot of times I'm shaking it as I move it to give it a little bit of action. That'll encourage a strike, it'll make a reaction bite, and it's a pretty helpful way to do it. I've got a video, I believe, of me actually fishing the lure. I hope I do. If I do, I'll have it put up right here, and if you don't see it, then I don't have it. I guess the next most important part of this would be your hook set. Now whenever you finally get that bite, you'll feel a tick. You'll know it, you'll just know it. It's like a tick. It won't feel like a rock or like a stump or something like that. You'll feel like this vibration. If you tie a string to a tree, close your eyes and have somebody hit the line, that's what it'll feel like. Now, whenever you get that bite, you want to reel up your slack quite a bit, have it almost tight, and the hook set's just straight up and down. You just want to get it and go up and down, just really hard. You don't want to, like, break your line ripping it that hard, but a good solid hook set is needed for a Texas rig. That's what makes it partially as effective as it is, because you can put it in small places, and that's why you have a reel like this and line like this, so you can just jack them straight out. That's also why you need a heavy rod or a medium heavy rod. That backbone is going to set that hook and just pull the fish out. But the backbone is not going to do it unless you put the oomph, the effort into it to set that hook. And then you just fight your fish, you bring it in, take a picture, stick it in the live well, I don't care what you do with it. So that was the Texas rig in a nutshell. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned how to throw a Texas rig, and I encourage you to go out and try it, because it's a good way to catch fish no matter what you're using. If it's a fluke, if it's a worm, if it's a creature bait, it doesn't matter. It's a good way to catch fish, and you can get it done. I hope you made it this far into the video. I hope you enjoy it. New stuff's about to come. We're about to get a new camera, so you're not looking at this grainy crap. Might have a new editor, so maybe this will look different. I don't know. But changes are happening, changes are coming, and maybe we can get a little something going. It'll be awesome. As far as fishing and everything, I think maybe we're gonna go Sunday. Don't know how that's gonna go, don't know how it's gonna be, but I'm expecting good things. It's gonna be a nice, pretty day, and we're gonna have a front come in the next day, so maybe the fish will be chomping. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this episode of Ken Arnold Fishing, and I will see you right here next time. Doing something. Not sure what, but we'll be doing something.